Welcome to the Student Ministry Podcast. This is episode 51 of the Student Ministry Podcast, and I'm your host, Steve Cullum. Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you are new to the Student Ministry Podcast, let me be the first to welcome you here. And thank you so much for tuning in. For those of you that have been back maybe since the beginning, or maybe you've been listening for quite a while now, thanks for tuning in once again. And right from the beginning, I want to remind you, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And if you haven't shared this with someone else, please do that as well. It just helps us to get the word out about this podcast. And I want to thank you guys so much for bearing with me on the last episode as well. I knew it was a little different, honoring my deceased youth pastor, Tim Yules, but I just really wanted to do that. And if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to episode 50, and that'd be awesome. But today we have another conversation with another amazing youth worker. We're going to be talking with Marty Estes. Marty is the Director of Children's and Youth Ministries at Sand Ridge Baptist Church in Lexington, Tennessee. And he also hosts a couple different podcasts, but one in particular that we wanted to highlight today is the Youth Worker's Guide to Video Games podcast on the Download Youth Ministry Podcast Network. We're going to be talking a lot about Marty's ministry and all about how he incorporates video games in his ministry, but on a larger scale, how he really connects with the students in his ministry beyond just teaching them the Bible, but how he can really connect with them. So we're going to be talking all about that today. But before we get into that, let's thank our sponsor for this episode of the Student Ministry Podcast, and that's G-Shades Student Curriculum. G-Shades is a curriculum and teaching strategy that focuses on helping students see every life situation through the lens of the gospel. That's G-Shades, is gospel shades. A lot of us in youth ministry do some things unintentionally. We sometimes only talk about the gospel when we're giving an altar call, or we teach students to do as Jesus did, but sometimes we forget to help them to see as Jesus sees. And sometimes we give students a fractured picture of the faith by teaching biblical principles and practices, but sometimes we forget to tie them down to their gospel foundation. So in an effort to try something different, G-Shades is a curriculum designed to help you produce confident, gospel-focused students who are able to use their gospel lens to navigate the complexities of modern culture. We're in youth ministry professionally, and so when it comes to the gospel, most of us naturally model it to our students, but G-Shade's goal is to help youth pastors teach it to their students. Each series is complete with a message manuscript, a small group leader guide, parent guides, Instagram devotionals, games, graphic slides, and even bumper videos. There's so much packed into this. You can download your free week of G-Shades student curriculum at gshades.org. And when you do place your order, be sure to use the promo code STUMINPOD. That's STUMINPOD, and you can receive 5% off your order. And we thank G-Shades Student Curriculum for sponsoring this episode of the Student Ministry Podcast. All right, now it's time to sit back and enjoy this conversation with Marty Estes. Marty has so much wisdom to share today from his years of youth ministry and children's ministry, and I'm so excited for you to hear. And like I said, he does a lot with video games, and so maybe you have had some questions about how to incorporate video games, and is it something you should do or shouldn't do, and all those different things. So he's going to talk a lot about connecting with students today using video games, but other ways to connect with students today too, and I hope you really enjoy it. All right, thanks so much for joining us, Marty.
Hey, you're welcome. I am just stoked to be here.
Yeah. So as usual here on the podcast, I'd love to just start off with talking about your story and getting to know you and what God's been doing in your life. I've had the privilege of getting to know you probably like the last few months. We've met up at the NYWC. I think was the first time we'd actually ever seen each other, in person. But we've chatted online and everything. And so glad to have you here today. But yeah, tell our podcast audience a little about your story, how you got to know Christ, and how you got into ministry.
Okay. So I started going to church when I was about 6, I guess. And the way it happened was my dad came upstairs came to me on a Saturday night, and he's like, "We're going to get up in the morning, we're going to get dressed up, and we're going to go to church." And I said, "What's church?" I had no clue. I had no concept. We had never been before. I mean, it was a building that you drove by, but I didn't know what you did there. And so from about the time that I was 6 until about the time I was 12, I was in church Sunday morning only. Maybe would go to a couple of days of EBS until I got bored and wanted to just go home and play Nintendo. Go figure, right? So that was where it started. First Baptist Church of Dixon, Tennessee, was where that started. And when I was growing up, around 5th grade, I really started getting bullied by a lot of kids, particularly a kid that had previously been a really good friend of mine. And in 5th grade, and this is going to sound like such a crazy story when I say this, but he literally got my entire 5th grade class to turn their back on me, they would not talk to me. They would not include me when we were playing on the playground. And this was before the days where nowadays it's like, oh, anti-bullying, but you can't bully anybody. Back then the teachers were just like, you go figure it out.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was like, even my teacher one day got in on it, and it shattered like any self-esteem that I had. And so by the time I was 12, that had spilled over to church as well. And like I just remember that like the day that it was done, like the day we quit going to church, we got to Sunday school that morning, and these kids, we had this like in this big old 2-story cinder, like brick block building, and it had these old windows that were weird, like different colors, like pink and green and stuff. I guess it was supposed to look churchy or something in the education part. And it would they had this old lever on them, and you turn it and they would open inward, like they would tilt inward. And I'd gone to the bathroom, and I came back and I couldn't find my Bible, and they had thrown my Bible out the window into the bushes below. And so I went and got it. They're laughing at me. And like our teacher's like this 80-year-old man who has no control. And he, basically just says, go get your Bible. I'll deal with them. Nothing happens. I come home. I tell my mom and dad, I'm done. I don't want to go to church. I distinctly remember the line that I said. What I told them is this is how I'm treated at school. These are people who are supposed to love Jesus and love me. And so I don't want to be a part of it anymore because it's hypocritical. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. So 5 years pass. Right? I go into junior high. I go into high school. I start making some friends. I start, like 1 or 2 people that I hung out with, and got really interested in drama, got really interested in, I don't know if you've ever heard of this. This sounds weird every time I say it. The forensics program.
Yeah.
It's not examining dead bodies.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I promise. It's like speech and drama and theater. And I got really involved in that. And through that, I met this guy named Jay. And Jay was unlike anybody that I'd ever known. Jay was, he loved BMX. He worked on his car. He listened to punk music, and he loved Jesus. And he would not shut up about Jesus. Like, it was constantly like, are you going to, what do you believe? well, I don't really believe anything. I don't really, do you think there's a God? Yeah, there's a God. I pray when I need something. Because I would call myself around that time like a functional agnostic. Like I believed that there was something there, but I didn't really believe. I had at 8 years old, I'd had a baptism experience, which was basically, hey, I want to be like that cool guy in my Sunday school class. I want to be baptized just like he was. I don't know why my pastor allowed that to happen. I don't know how. I guess I just had memorized the right things to say or whatever. Did nothing. It was basically just swimming at church. My mom's over there in tears, and I'm like, hey, this is really cool. It's warm in here.
Wait, you had a warm baptism? Mine was cold.
Yeah, it was inside. It was heated. Oh, it was nice.
That's lucky.
It's like a jacuzzi.
Yeah.
So I'd had this experience, but it hadn't really meant anything to me. By this time, I'm 17 years old. And Jay, we're on these trips to go to different schools in and around Middle and West Tennessee. And we are going and doing these drama competitions, and Jay is there. And every time he is there, he and this other guy are on me all the time. Hey, I see you got a cross necklace. Why do you wear that? I don't know. Just leave me alone, right? Just leave me alone. And finally, we're sitting in this area right in front of the offices for the school, waiting on my mom to come pick me up. And Jay walks up and he's like, hey, will you come to church with me tomorrow night? I think you'll really, really enjoy it. And I was like, here's the deal. I'm so tired of you talking about this. Will you please, if I come to church with you, will you please just shut up about it? Never mention it again.
Yeah.
And, it's like, now I get it. Like I understand those God-sized risks.
Yeah.
Right. He goes, yeah, sure.
Sure.
Takes one of those God-sized risks. Yeah, sure. And I said, fine. That's fine. What time does it start? 6:30. Where is it? He says, do you know First Baptist Dixon? And I said, yeah. He said, that's where I go to church. You're still coming tonight, right? He has no clue about my history with the church. He has no clue. I was like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, great. So I go. And from the minute I walk in the door, I felt something. Like I didn't know how to put a finger on it at that point, but it was like I remembered walking through those doors as a kid. I remember, and I was so conflicted. Like I was conflicted with that old hurt and also what was going on at that moment. And so I started going, and that was the first night. And from there, I just started going. I started going on Wednesday nights, and which then became, hey, if you're coming on Wednesday night, why don't you try Sunday morning? Okay. So I tried Sunday morning, and then it eventually became, hey, these guys that are singing in the praise band, I want to do that. Well, if you want to do that, you have to come on Sunday nights. Okay, I can do that. So and before I know it, I'm signing up for camp and going to camp that summer, which was the summer of 1997. I'm an old guy. Get over it. Summer of 1997, I go to student life camp at Covenant College in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The speaker that week was Dave Edwards. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dave Edwards. He's pretty old by now.
Yeah.
Dave Edwards was speaking. John Michael Clement leading worship. And on Tuesday night, it was June 23rd. I can tell you, I just he preached about people living a fake life and needing to come clean in front of Jesus and be saved. And I was like, dude, I hate you. I was interested in this girl. I was trying to sit by her. I was trying to hang out with her, and everything. I mean, it was like he was shooting arrows off the stage, and they were just hitting me in the heart. And he does the altar call. He does the bow your head, look up here if I've talked to you tonight, if you know you need Jesus. And I'm looking up, and I'm already just bawling. And long story short, I go outside, talk to one of our youth workers. He leads me to Christ. Basically, it's not really a leading me to Christ so much as it is, the commitment you need to make. You've been in church, you've been hearing this, you've made a commitment previously. And I was like, yeah, but that one didn't count. That was not real.
Yeah.
I want to make it real. So I pray I receive Christ. Spend the next 5 hours basically being that kid who walks around and says to every person at camp from our church, I'm so sorry that I've lied to you. Because I told you I was a Christian. I told you that I was following Jesus. I wasn't, but I am tonight. So that started it. And from there, I was going to go, I was going into my senior year of high school. The plan was I want to teach. I want to be a teacher. I'm going to teach English. I love words. I love grammar. I love all that stuff, writing, all that. So I was going to teach. And just over that next year, I dove in feet first, just completely immersed myself in the church and in learning God's word, all that stuff. I can't always say that I've been like that, but in this period of my life, I'm all in. Yeah. And God's beginning to do a work in my heart, and we're getting closer to going to college, and I had planned to go to Belmont, which is in Nashville, live with my parents, get my teaching degree, and come back to Dixon and be a teacher. And there's this inkling that begins at the back of my mind. No, you're not going to do that. You're not going to be that teacher, right? Okay, well, what is it? And so about that time is when my youth pastor pulled me aside, and he's like, hey, so this is going to be kind of weird, but let me just go ahead and spit it out. Have you ever thought about God having a call in your life? And I'm like, well, it's a call. What are you talking about? And he's like, I see leadership potential in you, and I see that the Lord could use you in a mighty way as a full-time minister. And I'd like to start meeting with you and a few other guys on Monday afternoons in my office. I'll have some drinks, we'll have some snacks, and we'll just talk about what it means to lead, what it means to be a man of God, what it means to surrender your life to God's call. You want to do that? And I was like, yeah, I'm in. Awesome. Because part of me was like, I am now in the inner circle, right? I am now one of the three disciples close to Jesus. I'm John, right? I'm John. Yeah. I am the disciple that Todd loves. That was my youth pastor's name was Todd. And so we begin to meet and we begin talking. Some Mondays it's just us reading scripture, and some Mondays it's us praying together. Some Mondays it's, hey, come on, we're going to go clean the bus. And what Todd did in those Mondays is he mentored me. I didn't know that at that time, but he was mentoring me, and he was passing down a blessing. And he is one of those big reasons that I believe that that it's important for us as youth pastors to speak truth into young men and young women, to speak reality into them, and to say, I see God moving in your life, or I see God wanting to use you for big things. It's important that we do that, especially as we see less and less young men surrender ministry, right? And others and young women surrender to ministry. It's so important that they have that adult who believes in them, who is called by God to speak that truth into them. And Todd was that for me. And I'm so grateful that he did, because one night I'm at home and I'm just I have been spiritually dry, and I have not been feeling the Lord's presence, and I'm desperate. And so I just my parents are asleep, I'm upstairs, and I'm just on my knees by my bed crying out, God, whatever you want to do with me, do it. I'm in. I'm done. I surrender. I'm doing this because I don't know that there's any other way that I can be reconnected with your presence. I feel like I'm being disobedient here. And so that's me at 18 years old. Yeah. And the next step then is to go and tell my parents what I've done. And they freak out. Oh. They were like, oh, no, you can't. How are you going to, the first question, right? How are you going to make a living? How are you going to ever provide for yourself? And I'm like, well, the plan was for me to come and live in your basement. So why are you concerned? But anyway, so we worked through that, and in the middle of that summer, two really important things happened. Number one, I surrendered to the ministry publicly. I made my call to ministry public in front of the church. And the second thing was I visited Union University for the first time. Union University is a Bible college or Christian college in Jackson, Tennessee. My music pastor went there, and he just wanted to take people there to show it off. And so it's one of those situations. We rolled up on the campus. There's a van load of about 6 of us, and I open the door and I step off. And as soon as my foot touches the ground, God says, "Here."
Yeah.
And I was like, that ain't going to work. That is not going to work. Because here's the thing. Here's what the crazy part about it. That was June. School starts in August.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was May. I don't know. I had like 2 or 3 months.
Still a couple months, yeah.
It's like, no, God, I can't come here. And he's like, yes, you can. I'll make a way. So 3 months later, after a lot of begging and pleading, because we had already like paid money to Belmont and all this stuff, like $200 fee, my parents give in, and they're like, okay, if this is where you feel like God's leading you, great, but you're going as an English major. I was like, yep, I'm gonna go teach English. I'm gonna do ministry on the side. I'm gonna be a youth pastor part-time, because I knew it was a call to youth.
Yeah.
Because it was like I'd always had this burden for the kid on the fringe, right? The kid who did not feel included. The kid, because I was that kid.
That was you, yeah.
I was the kid, and ironically, the people that I ended up hanging out with when I went to church, they were those kids. They were the like geeky kids who were eating the Bible for breakfast and playing music on the praise band and always at church and all kinds of stuff like that. That's who I hung out with. So these like I didn't realize at the time that they were core kids, but they are.
Yeah.
But they were the nerdy kids, so I was like, oh yeah, I'm in the fringe. But that too, I have a heart for. Even to this day, it's like, how do we bring you from out here? How do we bring you in?
Yeah.
Right. So go to Union, do my first semester, and it was just very clear after that first semester. Okay, Marty, this is where I want you, but you're still not doing what you're supposed to. So swap your major, because I had a major in English, which a dual major, English and education, and minor in Christian studies. And he's like, no, you need to swap your major. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So we battled about that for another semester, right? And going home that first year, like going home for summer, that's when it came up. Hey, I got to go back and I got to change my major. Well, you're not going to make any money. Well, you're not going to do this. I'm like, and at that time I was like, Dad, I was going to be a teacher. I wasn't going to make any money anyway.
Right.
I mean, so. And I told him, I said, I don't care if I'm living in a one-room shack, if I'm doing what God wants me to do, He will provide for me. And so I go back, I switch my major, I finish out at Union. I graduated from Union in 2002, and within 2 weeks, I started my first full-time ministry position. I graduated from college, and I got married.
That's a lot of life changes at the same time.
So I know that's kind of like a big jump forward. So while I'm at Union, my freshman year, I meet my wife. Her name is Erin. And this is going to be a throwback for some people. There may be people who listen to your show and they're going to go, who?
Probably.
What caught my attention about her the very first time was she walked in. She has a purple JanSport backpack, and it has a Supertones patch on it.
Nice.
All right. You know where I'm going?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, Supertone. I thought I was the only one who liked the Supertones. And so I proceeded to creepily stare at her for the next 3 months, because I thought if I can just catch her eye, I can be like, what's up? Supertones patch. And it's a match made in heaven, right? But here's the deal. She thought that I and the guy who sat in front of me in biology class were the biggest dorks who had ever lived. Long story short, we end up getting set up by a mutual friend on a blind date 3 years later, or 2 years later, where she epically rejects me.
Oh, no.
because she likes the guy who set me up with her. But he's on the other end of the row as we're watching a movie, holding hands and eating popcorn with another girl, breaking my current wife's heart.
Oh, gosh.
Right? So, like, there's this part in the movie where she is crying, and I look over and I'm like, you okay? And I'd already asked her that once, but I look over and I'm like, are you sure you're okay? And she's like, don't talk to me. I was like, all right, like, I can tell this is a terrible blind date.
Yeah.
Turns out he never told her it was a blind date with me. He just told me to show up. Yeah, he said. Anyway, long story short, a year later, I had formed a band in my senior year of high school, and we had kind of that year and after and going through college, we had stuck together. We were playing music together, and we came to Jackson. But like right in the summer between my junior and senior year of college to play a show at a coffee shop. And she saw our poster, saw my picture. She says, hey, I know that guy. She was coming off a really terrible relationship, a lot of hurt. And she shows up with her 3 friends to this coffee shop. And every show that we played since then, she came to. So she kind of became, she's following me around.
Yeah.
So after about a month or two, I'm kind of getting the hint. Like, that's in like late May or middle of May. Mm-hmm. By the end of June, I'm kind of getting the hint here. And I'm like, I asked one of her friends, I was like, so is she dating anybody? And the big whole complicated story comes out. She starts calling me on the phone for computer help. And on July 4th of 2001, we have our first date, which is to a family barbecue where I meet everyone, including her whole family, all their family friends. And by the end of the day, we're a couple. It's fantastic. It was wonderful. That was on July 4th. Our original first meeting was on June 8th of 2001. That's when she came to the show. 1 year later, on June 8th, 2002, we get married.
Nice.
And so graduate college, get married, move to a 2,000-person town to start my very first ministry position, which is a full-time position, children and youth at First Baptist Church, Adamsville, Tennessee, where we were there for 10 years. Our kids were born while we were in Adamsville. We did some really crazy stuff there, some stuff that probably should have gotten me fired. But we went to Canada on mission trip. We went to Romania on mission trip. We did tons of missions. We saw students growing. We saw them challenged. We had 13 students out of that student ministry surrender to the ministry.
Wow.
In those 10 years. One of them now is church planting in San Diego. One of them has been a missionary in Thailand. One of them has been a missionary in Romania. Others are serving churches. One of them is a music minister in Georgia. It's crazy to look back at what God did, not me, but what God did in that time, of me being a 22-year-old kid, right? Mm-hmm. And going through some very formative years. They took a huge chance on me. Yeah. And God did some really cool stuff. And he's doing some really cool stuff in that church today. I'm really excited for what's going on there. 7 years ago, got the call to come here to Sand Ridge Baptist Church, where I currently serve. Been here since 2012 as youth and children's pastor, mainly more youth than I am children. But we just finished a brand new sanctuary and have moved into it, which was one of the hardest years of ministry of my life. If you're counting, by the way, that's 17 years of full-time ministry, working on 18. It'll be 18 in June of this year.
Nice.
So in the midst of that, though, 2010, to rewind when I was 30, when we went to Romania, about a month later or so after coming back, I passed out at home on my son's bed. And we watch wrestling. We're wrestling fans. And so he thought I was setting him up for the Randy Savage elbow drop, right? So he gets off the bed and elbow drops me. And when he does, I pop back. And I literally believe he brought me back to life, because what happened in that moment was I had severe blood clots in my right lung.
Oh, wow.
That had cut all the blood flow. It's called a pulmonary embolism. It cut off all the blood flow to my right lung. And so I went to the hospital. They thought I was having a heart attack, hooked me up to EKG and all that stuff. And it's, your heart's in distress. Your heart's in distress. So they send me on to the big hospital in Jackson. I get there. They're doing all these tests. They run the dye. They put me through the machine, the CAT scan or CT scan, all that stuff. They're doing an ultrasound on my legs, with basically what your wife gets when she's pregnant. Doing that. And they call and they're like, you got to quit right now. You got to bring him back to the ER. So they're wheeling me back there, and the doctor walks in as soon as I get there, and he's like, you've got blood clots in your lungs. Don't move or you'll die.
Wow.
And so my mom is there and Aaron's there. Aaron has a breakdown. My mom is running down the hall because he just turns around and walks out. And she's yelling at him, you can't do that. You can't tell that. You can't tell us something like that and walk away. And he comes back and he stops and he says, I'm trying to go schedule your son an appointment with a radiologist because we've got to take and run a tube through his neck, down through his heart, over into his lung, and drip medicine in there to break those clots up, or he could possibly die. He can't move because if one of them breaks off and goes to his heart will explode, or if it bypasses his heart, it will go to his brain and he'll have an aneurysm and die.
Wow.
And so we've got to move. And so I was in the hospital for 7 days. I had this line in my neck. I had to sit like this the entire 7 days. It was the most miserable I've ever been in my life. Arms black and blue from getting blood drawn every 4 hours or 6 hours. They're pumping, all this stuff into me to thin my blood out, all this stuff. Finally, they come back and they're like, they go in there and they look. There's no clots. You're free to go. About day 4, the doctor walks in, the pulmonologist walks in, and she's talking to my wife, and I was asleep. And I woke up, and this is what she tells my wife. She said, she said the survival rate for a pulmonary embolism is 5%.
Wow.
5% of people who get this survive.
That's amazing.
And y'all, I already knew that God had a purpose for my life.
Yeah.
It's like that moment where it was like, I'm not finished with you yet. And so that has colored my story.
I'm sure, yeah.
And has every year it's August 10th. It's that day. It's the day that I passed out and scared my kids and my wife to death. And, every year I take that day and I'm just like, praise God, praise you. I'm still here. Thank you for giving me chance after chance after chance.
Yeah.
And so that's what's led me to today. And now I get the opportunity I'm on 2 podcasts. I do Nintendo Dads, which is just a fun, non-church related podcast I do with about 5 other guys. As a main cast, we just kind of rotate through where we talk about everything Nintendo.
Cool.
I've been doing that for about 3 years, and from there, I didn't start it. They just I found them through another show I was doing, and when that show ended, they brought me in. There, I was approached by Download Youth Ministry about a year and a quarter ago. They were looking to start a show about video gaming for youth workers. And Ronald Long, who does the Talking Squirrels podcast, and it's on sometimes morning after ministry, he's on there. So, he said, I know a guy that would be a perfect fit for this. So they contacted me, and now I do the Youth Workers Guide to Video Games over on the Download Youth Ministry Network. I say I do it. I mean, occasionally I do it. Y'all, if you're listening to this show and you listen to that show too, I'm sorry. This considers my formal apology for skipping the entire month of February. Oh my God. But we opened our building at the end of January, and I just needed a buffer month of coming down from that. Yeah. And it's really just an excuse that I'm lazy.
Well, sometimes you need that time. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
For sure. Yeah. I've actually thought over the years, I think this is like I'm pretty sure if I count right, I think this is the 4th year, or I'm starting the 5th year of doing this podcast. And there's quite a few times that I'm like, maybe I should do seasons. Some people do seasons of the podcast, and that way I can naturally put a month or 2 break in there every time, and then I don't have to just call myself lazy. I scheduled that in. That's how it goes.
Well, the idea of the show is it's supposed to be like a bi-weekly thing, and just be like about 30 minutes. But I usually try to do it on like Friday or Saturday. And by the time I'm there, like I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do. One more thing, it's I'm just terrible. I'm a terrible host. That's what. But no, like there's like episode ideas in my notes app on my phone. They're just sitting there, and now they're all irrelevant. Because I'm like, oh, that'd be a great show idea. Oh, well, everybody already knows about that.
That's already out.
So yeah,
that's all right. Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about your ministry just a bit, what it looks like now, and yeah, I'd love to because I know you're clearly into the video games and stuff like that, and I think that's probably played a big role in how you and to the students that you feel naturally connected with and everything too. So I'd love to hear, what's your ministry look like, the structure you guys have there at your church, but also how do you incorporate video games into your ministry, and how does that all connect together?
Okay. So we are a halfway traditional Southern Baptist church here. So if you're familiar with that, you know what kind of structure you're going to get. We do Sunday mornings. We still do Sunday nights. We do Wednesday nights. Wednesday nights are our Sunday mornings. That's our big night for programming. So on Sunday nights Wednesday nights being responsible for both children and youth. We now are in a place, and I've always kind of have been here, where someone else kind of took care of that. So I'm in charge of curriculum for Wednesday nights for kids. I'm in charge of kind of like determining classes and figuring out what that is. For Wednesday nights for students, I teach. Okay. And we also do small groups. But we do everything in an hour and 15 minutes. Wow. Yeah, it's a sore spot, but we do everything in an hour and 15 minutes because we have to. Everything else gets an hour. And they really want me to fit in that time, but I can't if we want to do small groups. So we start. We had been starting at 6:15, and everyone else had been starting at 6:30. But now everyone's moved back to 6:15, and we just end later, which is good and bad. I mean, my pastor supports it. He's like, yeah, go for it. Small groups, we're all in. But parents sometimes don't like that. Yeah. Because they're like, ready to go home.
Give my kid back.
So like we have a small group that frequently runs until 9:45, and I'm just like at the door going, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. They're coming. I promise. They're girls. They're talking. They're praying. Yeah. It's fine. So we run about anywhere from 50 to 60 kids on a Wednesday night. So we've got 8 small groups that take care of that. Each of those is staffed by an adult. A lot of those also teach Sunday school on Sunday mornings. Okay. So there is some difference there. We lost like a couple of male leaders this year, and that's okay. They needed to rotate out and take a break. One of them was like, both of my daughters are in here, and they never do anything without me. I need them to have non-parent time. Yeah. I'm like, I got that. I'm cool with that. So we've got 8 small groups. They meet for around 15 to 20 minutes. Okay. So a typical Wednesday night looks like countdown into worship, directly into video-driven announcements that one of our students does, which are like, I just let her run with it, and it's awesome. We go straight into a game. The game goes straight into a lesson. We go straight into small groups. So it's literally like a horse on fire running downhill as soon as the countdown stops. Yeah. It's like there is no pause, there's no stop, there's no catching your breath. Boom. Yeah. And so that's for our Wednesday nights. Sunday mornings is just traditional Bible study. Once a month, we do a birthday breakfast to celebrate our students that are having birthdays that month. They all bring in food. We let them eat it. It's very minimal effort for a really cool thing. Like you get to go to the front of the line. If it's your birthday, you don't have to bring anything. So, like that, it's just a little special honor.
Yeah.
And then Sunday nights, this is a real throwback. This will tell you how committed we are to Sunday nights. Up until recently, we had been doing Bible drill, which worked really good for 1 year, and then exploded. So now my wife is teaching our 7th through 9th grade students how to study the Bible from David Platt's Secret Church on how to study the Bible and why Bible study is important. So she's adapting that for them. And then we have a gentleman and his wife who are teaching our 10th through 12th graders, and they're going through the importance of Scripture. Next year, that's going to morph into our 7th through 11th graders being in a general Bible study on Sunday nights before service, and our 12th graders specifically going through a year of apologetics before they launch out.
Yeah, nice.
So there's a curriculum called the Truth Project. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. That's
I've heard of it. I haven't never used it.
Might make up the basis of that. But we're gonna actually just this guy. He serves here in our area. He's what's called an associational missionary.
Okay.
So he's over. Not over, we don't report to him or anything, but he's in charge of ministry planning and coordination for all of the churches in this county and the next county that are Southern Baptist churches.
Okay. In
our association. It's called the Beach River Association. So he's over that. Super smart guy, was a missionary in Africa for years, has come back. He got a few years ago, the Southern Baptists did a thing where they we're going to recall a bunch of missionaries because they didn't have the money to support them. He got recalled.
Okay.
So he had taught and done some other things. Super awesome, wonderful guy, super smart. So he has been doing this Truth Project with 3 of our seniors this year, 3 of our older students this year, and it's benefited him so much. I was like, would you do this on a weekly basis? And he was like, I would love to teach apologetics on a weekly basis. So boom. He's going to be in charge of that. Nice. So technically here, we're a church of about 425-ish on any given Sunday, and my pastor and I are the only full-time staff.
Wow.
So I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Some days it's, hey, can you whip me up this poster in Canva? Or some days it's, hey, I need you to go visit this person in the hospital. Or some days it's, I need you to go and deliver these mattresses to this guy who's going to take them to Mexico. And we just do it. We make it work.
Yep.
Until we can hire some more staff. And hopefully in the future that's coming and will be a little bit of relief for me and him. But I love doing what I do. I love ministry. I love getting to serve where I do. I was just talking to my wife about this tonight as we're driving home from getting groceries. My daughter takes dance class about 30 minutes away from where we live in Jackson. So we take those opportunities to go down, have a coffee date or grocery shop while she's at dance class, because they have Aldi, and Aldi is wonderful. So we were coming back, and I was like, my daughter was in the back, and she's like, why did we move here? She's 11 now. We moved here when she was 4. So she barely remembers, anything other than why did we move here? And I had to explain to her, it's not that there was anything wrong at the other place. So we felt God leading us here. We felt like God was going to use this. We felt like God was going to move here. And so we answered his call to be obedient. And it has been better here. And it has. I love this church. I love these people. And so in those days, even where I function a little bit more of what you might think an associate pastor would, I'm okay with that because I love these people.
Yeah.
Now, for how I use video games, we've got 2 video game stations set up in our student ministry room. We have a Switch. We have an Xbox One. The only reason we have an Xbox One is because we got a tremendously stupid good deal on one
Nice.
From somebody who was selling one here via Facebook Marketplace. It was like $200 for 2 controllers, 3 games, and the Xbox One S. And
I'd take it too.
Yeah, it was. Bad thing is one of those games is Minecraft locked to the profile of the person on the console.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's our Madden machine now, and our NBA 2K machine, and our Switch gets used for Smash Brothers, and that's it, pretty much. We are going to be getting one of those 1-Up arcade machines.
Oh, cool.
In the near future. I saw one at Walmart the other day that has Ghosts and Goblins and Final Fight and 2 other games on it. And I was like, yes, that's the one I want. So we're getting that. We've used video games for upfront stuff. Like we've played Fanny Pack Mario Kart. I don't know if you've ever seen that. So what you do is you get the Switch, right? And you put the Joy-Con in a fanny pack.
Okay, I'm
and it's on the
now.
front. It's on their front. And you put them all in a race. And all of you put on steer assist. You put on tilt controls. You put on all the stuff and automatic go. So they don't touch the Joy-Con at all. So what they're doing is twisting and turning and moving to control the character on the screen. And whoever finishes in the highest place wins.
That's amazing.
Fanny Pack Mario Kart. If you haven't played it, you need to try it. Totally stolen from DYM, the Facebook group. You definitely need to try it. It was a riot when we did it.
That's great.
We've also done some Jackbox games, of course, with the family filter. And the other one that they really like is a game on the Switch that just exploded in our group like the summer after the Switch came out. And it's called Astro Duel Deluxe. And basically what it is it's asteroids. Like think about that kind of art style. It's asteroids where you pilot a ship against other people and you navigate hazards and try to kill each other. And you get these insane power-ups like lasers and bombs, and there's turrets, all kinds of stuff. It is, and 6 people can play at once, and it is the most like screamingly good time for the Switch. It's like $10. And I think it's one of the most overlooked multiplayer titles on the Switch. So fantastically fun because you can just play it for hours. There's all these modes like one of the modes is like, you're just fighting his ships. One of them is if your ship dies, the captain's out and he's flying around. And if you survive long enough, you respawn a ship and now you can get back in the battle. So nice. It's some crazy stuff. Tons of accidental deaths and, all the stuff that makes multiplayer games really good.
Of course. I might have to look that up. I don't know why I've never heard of that one. But
Astro Duel Deluxe is in the eShop. And we love that one. But, like to me, games are, and I've said this on my show, for a lot of kids, it's like a universal language. I may not understand what you preach. I may not even care what you preach. I may not even be here because I want to be. But I could sit down next to them with a controller in their hand and play with them, and we can form a bond, right? And that allows me to speak into their world in a way that they understand. And, it's like Fortnite. Fortnite was huge. It was hot. I think it's kind of cooled off a little bit, but it's still there. But when it was going like gangbusters, that allowed me to speak to so many kids because I knew how to talk Fortnite, right? And they were like, how do you know about this? Well, because I play. Right? And so just using that as a bridge, it's like anything we use. It's like sports. It's like music. It's like anything. We use it as a bridge. It's a tool, right? That I believe it's a tool that God has redeemed and does redeem for us to be able to use to help people. And I love to be able to sit down on retreat. I don't do it a lot on Wednesday nights because I'm usually running like a chicken with my head cut off. But like on retreats or camps or whatever, we take it along with us and we play.
Cool.
Right. And so that just gives us some downtime. It gives us something to do to build those bonds, right? And to allow me to talk back and forth with those kids. It's not necessarily something that I look to program every week.
Okay.
But it gives them something to do. I mean, we have ping pong, we have pool, we have other stuff. We have video games too. Right. And so I think that's just I won't say it's a necessary thing for a lot of youth rooms, but it's one of those things that I think it's not going to hurt you if you put it in your youth room, right? It's probably going to help you, actually.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, especially if it's done well. I think that was one of the things that we have not. We actually I got a Switch for us not too long ago. I have my own that I've used on multiple occasions, but we just got one for the youth group, and I made sure I tried to get a lock box that I could lock it up. But then the cool thing is with that, I was like, how do I make sure? And then I think it might have been on your show or something like that. You mentioned just like, and then just remove the controllers through the night. I'm like, oh, that's all you got to do. Just turn it off, remove the controllers. They can't play it anymore. Now we can move on with the rest of the programming or whatever.
Right. So. Yeah, we've got a little, I mean, we're very high tech here at my church. We put all of our controllers in a Tupperware box.
Nice.
That we set back by the dirty sound booth where, there's like cans and right, like I walk in there the other day and there was a pack of Jelly Belly jelly beans, an opened package of extra gum, and a crushed Mellow Yellow can. I was like, this is student ministry.
This is it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like, I'm surprised there just wasn't like a randomly half chewed piece of pizza laying around somewhere.
Right.
And then somebody runs by and farts. And it's like, yes,
yep,
this is student ministry. All right. So, yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that you mentioned that bridge thing, because I think that's huge. And I think that's why even your podcast is so important. Because even if you're not really into video games like we are and don't play them a lot yourself, it's so important to understand them to be able to have that bridge between another kid. I was talking to just some 7th grade boys on Wednesday this week, and we were talking about music, but we also started talking about video games. And their small group leader and I were chatting about how important it is to allow God to redeem some of those games, because there are very inappropriate games out there, but that doesn't mean that all video games are bad. And it also sometimes means like that you and I and other youth workers, like, we have to know about what those video games are about. Even if we don't play with them all the time, it's important to know what they're about, because our kids are going to be talking about them.
Yeah, I think that's so important for us, no matter what age we are, to do something to be proactive about being a student of the culture.
Yeah.
Whether that's like getting on Jonathan McKee's blog and reading like the source for youth ministry, or that's like going over to the youth culture report, or things like that, or just like getting on YouTube and looking at what's trending and looking at what is popular, or just asking your students. Like, I've learned at 39 years old, like I turned 40 this year, which is, like I've learned that I'm in a position now where like when I was 22, I was, hey, that guy can be my friend, or that guy's cool. Yeah. Now it's like, that guy's like my dad, and so if I ask things like, what's the woe? They're not. They may laugh at me, but you know what they're going to do? They're going to eventually show me what it is.
Yep.
They're going to show me. Like, I've had students like come up and be like, I'll be playing Fortnite, and they're like, "You're doing that wrong. Let me show you what you should be doing." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah." So like, I could do, and you could take that one of two ways as a student pastor. Like, you can get all blowed up about it and be like, "Kids, blah blah blah," or you can be like, "They're letting me into their world."
Yeah.
And that, like, I think that's the important part, is how many steps can I take down into their world?
Yeah.
Because, I don't know if you've read the book Hurt by Chap Clark. Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic book, but he talks about, the subculture of students, and how we can't live in that world, but we can descend the steps, and we can kind of like hang out with them on the steps. That's my goal every Wednesday night, is how many steps down can I get?
Yeah.
Like, we had a kid come this past Wednesday night for the first time. Definitely what I call a fringe kid, like Grateful Dead T-shirt, spacers in her ears, scars on her arms, which, a whole nother story there.
Yeah.
And was brought by a girl who just got saved the week before, which is really cool.
Yeah.
You're talking about doubt. We started a series on doubt, and one of our small group leaders has her in her 5th block class. And today she was talking to her, and she said, I didn't get to see you last night. I'm sorry. I didn't even notice you were there, because we changed up our seating last night, and everybody was kind of clumped up. And she's like, oh yeah. She said, I've never been to a church like that before. She said, the last church I went to, they taught me that if I had doubts, I would go to hell.
Oh, wow.
And she said, I used to go to church all the time with my dad. And she says, but my dad died. And now my mom, she's religious, but she doesn't like to go to church. And so I asked her to go and she doesn't take me. And so I don't get to go. And she said, I've been begging my friends at school to take me to their church. And she said, I will be back.
Wow.
And like, but the thing is like having that conversation, like I was just trying to, like, I walked up and I was like, you know, what do I say to this girl? How do I get on the steps with her? Right. And so I think video games and culture are a huge way to do that. That's why it's important for us. We've got to engage.
Yeah.
Can't stick your head in the sand. It's not like, here's the thing. The question is not, let me just use one example that's been coming up tons lately. Okay. Youth pastors, you don't have to like Billie Eilish. You can think her music is the most stupid thing that you've ever heard in your life, but you better know what she's saying.
Yep. And
you better know why she's popular.
Yep.
You better know why so many of your kids gravitate toward her. And I'm going to say this, it might make some of your listeners mad. I don't care. I'm only on here once. I'm like, at this point, I'm like a revival speaker. I can come carpet bomb everything and just fly away. I think that's the difference between a lazy youth pastor and a good youth pastor.
Yeah.
Is lazy youth pastor says, I don't like that, so I don't have to learn about it, or I don't understand that, I'm not going to learn about it. Good youth pastor says, it might take some work. I'm going to dig up the resources. And I'm going to find out what it's about.
Yeah.
Are you going to do it every time? Are you going to get it right every time? No. But if you're doing your best to be a good youth pastor, you're trying to engage the culture that your students are part of.
Amen. Yeah.
That's the whole reason I do the video game show.
Yeah. 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 Because that's the difference, like, not only between the lazy youth pastor and someone that actually wants to put some effort into it, but someone that I think for you and I and a lot of people that I've had on the podcast is people that have really felt that calling by God to actually make an impact on the next generation. That it's not just a stepping stone sort of job, or it's not just something that I'm doing right now and moving on. Like, if you really feel that God has called you to make an impact on the next generation, then take every effort you can to know about that generation that you're going to try to introduce to Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, the main goal, and I say this every time, right, is that, like, we are your bridge between the world of video games and students, so you can have relevant conversations. Why? So this podcast can be a tool to help you build a relationship that hopefully will one day help you win a child to Christ.
Yep.
Bottom line.
Yeah.
That's it. That's why I do it.
Yeah. And it's kind of fun too, but
absolutely. That's what I mean, I love, who does not like talking about what they enjoy and what they're passionate about?
Totally.
Okay, there you go. I'm passionate about student ministry and video games. It's a perfect fit.
There you go. Yeah. There was not too long ago where I just kind of sat back at my life and I looked back and I was like, never once when I was younger would I have ever thought that this little thing that I like to do, like in my own bedroom when I got home, like I'd love to, fire up Mario Brothers, would that ever turn into a tool that God would use for youth ministry? But he does all the time. It was like a kid the other day, just what you were saying. It's like all of a sudden I found out one of the middle school boys absolutely loves Nintendo stuff as well. And I was like, dude, what game are you into lately? And he was able to just share it, and then all of a sudden that conversation went. And he's got an awkward kid, but it's cool to just start that conversation right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
So I know we're running out of time, but I'd love to just give you a chance to maybe share any last minute wisdom with our podcast listeners, and then just get a chance to. I'm sure people want to connect with you. So any tips and everything, and then also a chance to just plug everything else that you're doing right now.
Yeah, I would say that the biggest tip that I can give anybody as far as student ministry is two things. Number one, surround yourself with a fantastic team of volunteers. that could do your job more than 1 week if you were not able to be there. In other words, work yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
Not only do you surround yourself with volunteers who can do that, surround yourself with students that you are pouring into, that you lead, you are identifying leadership qualities like I talked about in my story. Find that Marty and speak life into them and call them out.
That's good.
Call them out. The second thing that I would tell you to do is that you not only do you need to be surrounding yourself with a group of people who will be there for you, you need to be pouring yourself out to other people. You need to be finding a way for you to resource someone else, because your way of doing student ministry, your way of leading in the church can inspire someone else that may need that. Last year we did the Download Youth Ministry National Day of Volunteer Youth Worker Training.
Yep.
We were a host site for that. We were the only site in West Tennessee that did that. We had 11 churches counting hours come to that and be a part of that. And I pretty much feel like people were so sick of me talking about it by the end, because I was like calling every church I could. I was talking to churches in our association around, telling them, you need to be here. Here's a crazy thing about this. I mentioned the Beach River Association earlier.
Yeah.
Recently they had the super early bird rate, where you can get them for $79.
Yep.
Our association offers a $75 rebate.
It's amazing.
To every church who signs up. So that training for them was $4 if they signed up by this Tuesday. We got 16 churches.
You're so close to
counting
winning.
Ours. 16 churches. And here's the deal. I was close to winning, and I did win. I would really have liked to have gone to San Diego or wherever, California, and be out there. But here's what I'm more excited about than that is that we are resourcing churches in our association. There is a church, their pastor looked at me the other day. We were on a pastor staff and wives retreat this past weekend, and I got to talk about it. That's why we got up there. Is because I was promoting it pretty heavy during that. And he pastors a church of 20 people. He got his call to ministry when he was 63 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. Huh. And this is what he told me. He looked at me and or 53 years old. I'm sorry. He looked at me and he said, we don't have any youth, but I'm willing to come learn so that we can.
That's so great.
And I was like, dude, why can't everybody be like you?
Yeah.
Because here's what he understands. He understands that his job is to pour out to somebody else.
Yeah.
And as ministers, that's what our job is. We're supposed to be filling up with the presence of God so we can pour out to other people. And so you need to find that person to pour out to. My last church that I served, where I was for 10 years, we had 2 to 3 really committed volunteers over that 10-year period. I wish now I have a ton. And I'm glad for that. But nobody ever really wanted to just sell out and super do youth ministry, right? Except 1 or 2 people. And that was hard.
Yeah.
I needed those people to pour out to me. But also during that time, it birthed a passion in me to resource people to be able to lead the church.
Yeah.
I love that. I love discipleship. That's a huge passion of mine. And so, if you're out there and you're struggling with that and you're hearing this and you're like, yeah, that's real great for you to say, you go get some volunteers. Yeah, right. Start with one.
Yeah. Start
with one person and just beg them to come. Bribe them. You know what I do I have a fridge in my student room, and it says on the front of the fridge, adults only. And I buy stuff for them that they like. Like I've got Gatorades and Coke Zeros and Mountain Dew, Diet Mountain Dew, and bottles of water and stuff. And I'm like, this is yours. Thank you for serving our students.
Yep.
Why is that? Because, and I go overboard on this stuff. Like we do appreciation dinners, and I buy them candy, and I do all this stuff. Why? Because for years I did not have. And so there's never too much appreciation. I'll say that's tip number 3. I know I was only supposed to do 2, but like if I could go back and tell my younger self, I would say start with that 1, build them, and then they will go tell other people. You know, they've got to have that bug. They've got to have that youth ministry bug. Like it's okay if it's irreverent sometimes. It's okay if it's messy sometimes. It's okay if all this doesn't work sometimes, but we're just going to love students. That's what you need. Find those people, bring them close to students, because they don't just need to hear you. They need to hear those other people too.
That's so good. So good. So Marty, where can people find you and ask you all the questions and listen to you and all that stuff?
Yeah. So you guys can find the podcast, the Youth Ministry Guide to Video Games, Youth Workers Guide to Video Games, over at podcast.downloadyouthministry.com. You can listen to it in your browser, or it's everywhere. Like I think we're on Spotify. I know we're on Google Play and Apple. You can download it there. If you just search Youth Guide to Video Games, or just search DYM Podcast Network, and we'll pop up. And hopefully we'll have a new episode out really soon. You can find us on Facebook. We have a Youth Workers Guide to Video Games Facebook page. We also have an Instagram and a Twitter. And the Instagram is YW Guide to Video Games. The Twitter is YWGVG. So it's just the abbreviation YWGVG. And then you can interact with me at Marty Estes.
Cool.
That's on Twitter. That's on Instagram, Facebook. I'd love to be friends with you. We'll talk ministry. We'll talk video games. We'll hang out. Come on. Cool. Bring it on.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and we'll have all those links in the show notes for sure as well. So be sure to check them out down below. Marty, it's been great to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, and may God bless your ministry.
Man, I have loved my time. I feel like I have been super long-winded, and so I apologize for that. But this has been an honor. I love talking. And I love video games, so I love being on a podcast. You're doing a great thing. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. And before we wrap up, I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Student Ministry Podcast. And if you have not followed the Youth Workers Guide to Video Games, be sure to do that. I know for one, video games have been a huge part of my life. I actually do write some video game stuff on the side, and also have a video game podcast that a lot of times I don't really ever talk about. I don't think I've ever actually talked about it on this podcast at all about that, but I do that in large part because I enjoy video games, but it's also a way for me to connect, as we talked about today, with students. And so if you have any questions about that, be sure to contact Marty. You can also contact me. You can find me on Twitter at Steve Cullum. That's SteveCullum. And you can also find the Student Ministry Podcast pretty much on most of the major social medias out there. And if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that. If you haven't shared this with a friend, be sure to do that as well. And before we wrap up, I do want to thank G-Shade's Student Curriculum for sponsoring this episode of the Student Ministry Podcast. If you haven't checked out their website yet, be sure to do that at gshades.org. And when you place your order, be sure to use the promo code STUMINPOD, that's STUMINPOD, to receive 5% off your order. But also remember, you can go there and download a free week of curriculum right now without any promo code or anything like that. Thanks so much, G-Shades, for sponsoring this episode of the Student Ministry Podcast. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode, but we'll be back again with another amazing interview with another amazing youth worker. Until that time, thank you so much for tuning in, and may God bless your ministry.